you kids that aren't at home because you're all here except for one kid. Let's see, story quiz. So 20 years we'll talk about in a moment. Book fair, we kicked out those kids. An assessment redo. Again, if you want to fix it, I'll be grading all of them probably Saturday morning because I'm a teacher and don't have a life. Again, if you want to submit it, you have them through tomorrow night, and then I will go through and grade all of the ones that got turned in at that time. And so you don't have to email me. I just grade them automatically, and I'll see all the ones turned in and make them better. To remind you, we still do have quiz for tomorrow, which is going to be over the after 20 years, the little half sheet of blue papery thing you had about the guy and the other guy, and they meet each other. And I know, I'm sad too, there's no actual death in it. I tried to give you like an actual normal-ish real story, although there is kind of a twist, but no, not a deathy twist. And again, review guide to help you out in case you have confusing bits. That'll hopefully help get you ready for it. Also, tomorrow is our last grade for this 9 weeks. And so it's your last time to impact your grade whatsoever. Then, our first Charger Challenge is coming up next week. Yes, I know you don't know what a Charger Challenge is. That's why it's called teaching, and you're going to learn what a Charger Challenge is. This is a competitive battle between the Heroes, Stars, and Globetrotters that happens once each 9 weeks. Once the 9 weeks ends, each team picks 15 kids to compete in a battle to the death. And by battle to the death, I mean we just get to see who's the winner. And so we have picked our 15 kids, and some of those kids are in this class, and some of those kids won't be able to do it, so we're going to have other kids take their spots, which we'll talk about in a moment. If you are Student of the Month, you get an automatic invite. If you're Student of the Week, you get an automatic invite. If you have highest B points, you get an automatic invite, and highest grade in my class gets an automatic invite. Then, I give invitations to some random kids that just make me happy. What's involved? Well, one, this is going to be next Tuesday. What's involved in it is we have a bunch of, it's like Olympics, but like cooler. We have competitions for some for smart kids, some for athletic kids, some for those kids who just exist. And so we're going to have things like there's a dodgeball, but you can't move your feet. There's going to be those of you who are good with hand-eye coordination. There's like a ball, basketball, bounce, catch it into a thing. There's going to be another one where you have to solve puzzles. There's what's called a hula hoop race that does not involve actual hula hooping, but you like going through a hula hoop with an entire team without letting go of your hands. There's a trivia round, but the trivia is not boring things. It's going to be stuff like Stranger Things trivia questions, or it's going to be Taylor Swift trivia questions, or NFL, or right now we'd probably do... No, I think we do NFL right now, or it might be Major League Baseball. But we throw in questions along those lines. If you win, you get 10 B points because you're a winning person. Also, you get a limited edition button that only 60 kids get per year, which says that you're a winner of the Charger Challenge. You also get your name up in the hallway where you see all those little symbols on the way out to the bus. You get your name added to the hallway. And the bragging rights of knowing that you're better than the Stars and Globetrotters, which really is the best thing of all. You also will become the background, if you win, of my computer. And so every time you see my computer-y thing up there, I switch it out with whoever the newest winning team is, and you get to be the one that whenever I switch off my main screen, kids are going to get a chance to see you up there. The events, this is going to be the little hula hoopy race thing where you have to keep your hands together in the hula hoop as you all have to go through it to sort of check how well you do that. This is the trivia where you have to be able to answer questions with everyone staring at you to add all kinds of pressure to it. This is going to be where I take the pictures of all the winning teams. And then this is where you get your name out there in the hallway so you get to brag to all those people in the past. What I'm getting ready to do is I have invites for kids in this class. If you get an invitation, congratulations, you're not in. It means that you have the first opportunity to get in. The list unlocks at 4 o'clock today. It is the first 15 kids to come and tell me they want to do it. 15 kids who say they want to come and do it, you lock in your spot. We have 20 kids getting invites, so not every kid who gets an invitation automatically gets into it. Plus, some invitations are going to like the football player kids, and they can't do it because their season's not over, so they get to hold on to their invite until like the next round we go and stuff like that. If you don't get an invite, you still have a chance of doing it. 9 a.m. tomorrow, it unlocks to any kid who wants to do it, as long as you have a C- or higher in my class and in Butz's class and in Melling's class. And then you are good to go if you want to. If you get an invitation and you don't want to do it because you think it's stupid and stinky, you can give your invitation to another kid and they can take your spot. But you never get another invitation. So you have to keep that in mind. But if you don't want to do it, that is up to you. Our kids that got invitations in here would be young Emily, young Joshua, and young Ava. Those of you who got invitation, if you need to contact parents to ask, you're more than welcome to. At 4 o'clock, because that way it gives all of my classes an equal chance, you are more than welcome to come see me, or you can send me an email that says me, play me, and then you're good to go. The rest of you, at 9 a.m. tomorrow, if you still want an open spot, come to my room, and you can be first come, first serve, and then we lock it in. And it again is Tuesday of next week after school until 5:45. Questions? Then let's deal with creepy old people that aren't me. So, with our story about Landlady, we haven't gotten very far into it, but we're just getting ready to get to the suspense part. Because again, what is suspense? So we're starting to get to it. Although maybe some of you guys have started to suspect there's a little bit of suspense. Maybe you have suspicions about what might happen, but we'll see. Let's see. With it, who's our main character? Billy. How old is Billy?
45.
Where is it taking place?
Bath, England.
Nicely done. That's right, Bath, England. Ooh. Where was he planning on staying?
The Bell and Dragon.
Best name ever. But on his way to the Bell and Dragon, what did he discover?
An old lady with a bed.
We're gonna call it a bed and breakfast, or just an old lady with a bed. That does make it sound more creepy. Where does he see the dachshund?
In the window.
And what does he say about the dachshund?
It's small.
Because why is it a good sign?
Because the grandma.
There you go. And then we got there's our bed and breakfast. By the way, this is the one here in Fishers. If you go over to Conner Prairie, right across the street from Conner Prairie, we have a bed and breakfast that's been there since like I was in high school. And it's like this little farmhousey type thing. Since dinosaur times. You can see the dinosaur footprints in there. Not gotten to that yet. Okay. So I think we got to the part where they are, don't you talk over there, sassy child, where he just got into the house. And let's see, I think that was it. We didn't even get to anything exciting past that, did we? Oh, we found out the price. Is it expensive or cheap?
It's 5 and 6 pence.
And was that good or bad? Good. There you go. So he's all excited because it's going to be cheap and make his life better. So far, everything seems like a perfectly normal and boring story, and you should be really upset that we're reading it together because you're like, this is a complete waste of time about some weird kid who's just going to go stay in some place. And I apologize for having you read this perfectly normal story. We are going to be on the front side, 4th column, over there where it says the 5 and 6 pence is fine. And then we get to go from there. 5 and 6 pence is fine. I should like very much to stay here. I knew you would. Do come in. She seemed terribly nice. She looked exactly like the mother of one's best school friend, welcoming one into the house to stay for the Christmas holidays. Billy took off his hat and stepped over the threshold. Just hang it over there, and let me help you with your coat. There were no other hats or coats in the hall. There were no umbrellas, no walking sticks, nothing. What does that imply?
There's no one there.
There you go. We have it all to ourselves, she said, smiling at him over her shoulder as she led the way upstairs. You see, it isn't very often I have the pleasure of taking a visitor into my little nest. This old girl's slightly dotty, Billy told himself. But at 5 and 6 pence a night, who cares about that? Okay, do you guys know what slightly dotty means?
No.
So,
freckles.
Weird.
So it means weird, but not like creepy weird. It's like when your grandma, when she keeps asking you how 5th grade is going, and you're like, Grandma, I'm in junior high. She's like, I'm sorry, 6th grade. Like, Grandma, 7th grade. That's what they mean by slightly dotty. When you just have like those older people who sometimes get confused. That's what slightly dotty means. You shush your mouth, Jonathan. All right. We have slightly done. Billy told himself. There we go. Sorry, brain. I got confused by Jonathan. This old girl's slightly dotty, Billy told himself. But at 5 and 6 a night, who cares about that? I should have thought you'd be simply swamped with applicants. Oh, I am, my dear. I am. Of course I am. But the trouble is that I'm inclined to be just a teeny-weeny bit choosy and particular, if you know what I mean. Yeah. But I'm always ready. Everything is always ready, day and night in this house, just on the off chance that an acceptable young gentleman will come along. And it is such a pleasure, my dear, such a very great pleasure when now and again I open the door and I see someone standing there who is just exactly right. She was halfway up the stairs, and she paused with one hand on the stairwell, turning her head and smiling down at him with pale lips. Like you, she added. And her blue eyes traveled slowly all the way down the length of Billy's body to his feet and then up again. 2 quick pauses. It's not sexist, but when this was taking place, which is like 50 years ago, women did not travel by themselves. That was naughty, no. So when she says waiting for a guy to show up, it's because those were the only people who were really allowed to travel by themselves, because sexism. Yay! So back then, it was the all thing. Not yay, but yay. And so that was the issue, is that back then, it was just guys. And I hate to point this out, because I don't want to read into it, but just so you properly understand what that last part, when it says, her blue eyes traveled slowly all the way down the length of Billy's body to his feet and then up again, is as she's walking up the stairs, she sort of turns and just goes, like you.
She likes it.
And just sort of does like a little looky up and down thing. So again, I'm afraid you're going to read too much into things. I'm just making sure you understand what's happening in the story. On the first floor landing, she said to him, "This floor is mine." They climbed up a second flight, and this one is all yours. Here's your room. Oh, I do hope you'll like it. She took him into a small but charming front bedroom, switching on the light as she went in. The morning sun comes right in the window, Mr. Perkins. It is Mr. Perkins, isn't it? No, it's Weaver. Mr. Weaver. How nice. Well, I have put a hot water bottle between the sheets to air them out, Mr. Weaver. It's such a comfort to have a heated bottle in a strange bed with clean sheets. Don't you agree? And you may light the gas fire at any time if you feel chilly. Do any of you guys have the heated blanket things in your?
Yeah.
If you do, that's a newer invention. What they used to have before heated blankets were these things called hot water bottles. And it was this really thick rubber, and it looked like a really big water balloon. You would pour boiling water into it and then seal it and then put it in between the sheets, and it would radiate out heat from inside of the little thing. And that was sort of the early version of having like the heated blanket in your bed. So she's like, I already have a hot water thing in the bed, already radiating heat, ready for you. So if you want to go to bed, you are good to go. Showing you that she's very caring and prepared. Well, it's not weird, it's helpful. Thank you, Billy said. Thank you ever so much. He noticed that the bedspread had been taken off the bed, that the sheets had been neatly turned back on one side, all ready for someone to get in. I'm so glad you appeared, she said, looking earnestly into his face. I was beginning to get worried. That's all right, Billy answered brightly. You mustn't worry about me. He put his suitcase on the floor and started to open it. What about supper, my dear? Did you manage to get anything to eat before you came here? I'm not a bit hungry, thank you. I think I'll just go to bed as soon as possible. Tomorrow I've got to get up rather early and report to the office. Well, very well then. I'll leave you now so that you can unpack. But before you go to bed, would you be kind enough to pop into the sitting room on the ground floor and sign the book? Everyone has to do that because it's the law of the land, and we don't want to go breaking any laws at this stage in the proceedings, do we? She gave him a little wave of the hand and went quickly out of the room and closed the door. Do you know what the book is she's talking about?
It's a contract, and it's gonna be
Not quite a contract. It's well, I mean, kind of. It's the legally binding to keep track of people who's like, when you guys probably aren't 18 and aren't going and staying at hotels, but legally you keep track of who stays there. And so she's just saying, sign the book so I can keep track of who stays here for like legal reasons. So that's why she's saying, go down and sign the book. Uh-huh.
If they're in England, wouldn't they talk in British accent?
Yes, but I don't think you want me to try and do a British accent.
Do it.
Chip, chip, cheerio. I'll see what I can do.
That's amazing. Yes.
That's from the
See,
Spanish.
I'm so glad you're here. She gave him a little smile, and then Now, the fact that his I can do the narrator in my American voice. Now, the fact that his landlady appeared to be slightly off her rocker didn't worry Billy in the least. After all, she was not only harmless, there's no question about that, but she was also quite obviously a kind and generous soul. He guessed that she'd probably lost a son in the war or something like that and never gotten over it. So on that, again, another idiom, off her rocker means?
Crazy.
Yeah, crazy, but again, not like kind of crazy, but just like, again, grandma asking you how 5th grade is going, kind of crazy. So off your rocker is like that kind of level. So a few minutes later, after unpacking his suitcase and washing his hands, he trotted downstairs to the ground floor and entered the living room. His landlady wasn't there, but the fire was glowing in the hearth, and the little dachshund was still sleeping in front of it. The room was wonderfully warm and cozy. I am a lucky fella, he thought, rubbing his hands. This is a bit of all right. He found the guest book lying open on the piano, so he took out his pen and wrote down his name and address. There were only 2 other entries above his on the page, and as one always does with guest books, he started to read them. One was a Christopher Mulholland from Cardiff. The other was Gregory W. Temple from Bristol. Well, that's funny, he thought suddenly. Christopher Mulholland? Well, that name rings a bell. Now, where on earth had he heard that rather unusual name before? Was he a boy at school? No. Was it one of his sister's numerous young men, perhaps? Or a friend of his father's? No, it wasn't any of those. He glanced down again at the book. Christopher Mulholland, 231 Cathedral Road, Cardiff. Gregory W. Temple, 27 Sycamore Drive, Bristol. No, wait. As a matter of fact, now that he came to think of it, he wasn't at all sure that the second name didn't have almost as much of a familiar ring about it as the first. Gregory Temple, he said aloud, searching his memory. Christopher Mulholland. Such charming boys, a voice behind him answered, and he turned and saw his landlady sailing into the room with a large silver tea tray in her hands. She was holding it well out in front of her and rather high up, as though the tray were a pair of reins on a frisky horse. To demonstrate this again, without having you read too much into it, I have my little demonstration thing. I don't have teacups, just use your imagination. I have my snow cone cups. So when she comes in from wherever she was, she comes in holding the tray, and normally, I'm assuming when you hold a tray, you would carry it. She brings in the tray like this, and then sets the tray down. Who are you looking for, Mr. Roach? She's right in front of the back turned. That's why she was so sneaky. So again, coming in, that's how she's sort of holding it, is up, so it's kind of near her like you'd hold the reins of a horse. Again, don't read too much into it, just making sure we understand everything.
What about the first pieces?
I'm sorry. Such charming boys, the voice behind him answered. I'm trying to voices and genders? Okay. They sound somehow familiar, he said. They do? How interesting. Right? Okay. I tried telling you it was going to be painful, but you guys are like, no, I like the pain! No, you don't. It's awful.
It's really good.
We'll go back to it. They do? How interesting. I'm almost positive I've heard those names before somewhere. Isn't that queer? Maybe it was in the newspapers. They weren't, like, famous in any way, were they? I mean, famous cricketers or footballers or something like that. Those of you who don't follow British sports, there's the little tea tray she brought in.
Football,
So
soccer.
cricketer is like baseball, but you play it for 3 days. And then
Football is soccer.
they're going to talk about this and just, and then football is the same thing as soccer. And they're going to talk about in a moment this thing, which is two boxers who are known for fighting each other. Evan?
They were in the news because they got they get away.
They went missing.
Did they go missing?
Interesting. Maybe they were famous. It could be famous people.
Famous
No.
thing.
You guys are just
Like
going
grandma.
straight to the bad things, aren't you?
Yes.
So
Famous, she said,
Wait, maybe she's a cannibal.
setting the tea tray down on the low table in front of the sofa. Oh no, I don't think they were famous, but they were extraordinarily handsome. Both of them. I can promise you that. They were tall and young and handsome, my dear, just exactly like you. Once more, Billy glanced down at the book. No, look here, he said, noticing the dates. This last entry, that's over 2 years old. It is? Yeah, indeed. Okay, Christopher Mulholland's. That's nearly a year before that. That's more than 3 years ago. Dear me, she said, shaking her head and heaving a dainty little sigh. I would never have thought it. How time does fly away from us all, doesn't it, Mr. Wilkins? It's Weaver. Weaver. Of course it is, she cried, sitting down on the sofa. How silly of me. I do apologize. In one ear and out the other. That's me, Mr. Weaver. You know something, Billy said. Something that's really quite extraordinary about all this. No, dear, I don't. Well, you see, all right, both of these names, Mulholland and Temple. Now, I not only seem to remember each of them separately, so to speak, but somehow or other, in some peculiar way, but they both appear to be sort of like connected together as well, as though they were both famous for like the same sort of thing. If you see what I mean, like Dempsey and Tunney, for example, or Churchill and Roosevelt. Dempsey and Tunney, these two boxers that fought each other. Every time you heard one name, you heard the other. And then Churchill and Roosevelt, from this thing called World War II, they were like the leaders of this place called America and England who worked together. So that's why he's like, I remember these two names being connected together. Apparently, according to Evan, they were kidnapped, or maybe they were famous for some other reason. How amusing, she said. Now, come over here now, dear, and sit down beside me on the sofa, and I'll give you a nice cup of tea and a ginger biscuit before you go to bed. You really shouldn't bother, Billy said. I mean, I didn't mean for you to do anything like that. He stood by the piano, watching her as she fussed about with the cups and saucers. He noticed that she had small, white, quickly moving hands and red fingernails. I'm almost positive it was in the newspapers I saw them. Oh, I'll think of it in a second. Oh, I'm sure I will. There's nothing more tantalizing than a thing like this, which lingers just outside the borders of one's memory. He hated to give it up. No, okay, wait a minute, he said. Wait just a minute. Mulholland. Christopher Mulholland. Okay. Wasn't that the name of that Eton schoolboy who was on like a walking tour through the West Country? And then like all of a sudden, milk? Would you like some sugar? Yes. What did she just do?
Then
Weird.
talk about he just disappeared.
Yes, please. And then all of a sudden, Eton schoolboy? Oh no, my dear, that can't possibly be right, because my Mr. Mulholland was certainly not an Eton schoolboy when he came to me. He was a Cambridge undergraduate. Come over here now and sit next to me and warm yourself in front of this lovely fire. Come on, your tea's all ready for you. She patted the empty place beside her on the sofa. She sat there, smiling at Billy and waiting for him to come over. Mm-hmm. Now we'll get to go to the next page, which you don't have, because I don't want you to... Have we hit to the suspenseful part yet?
Yes.
Does anything seem odd? Are we okay? So what, specifically, what odd things do you think you're noticing? Ouch. Eden?
The fact that she keeps trying to change the subject when they talk about
The younger
when they talk about the boys.
Well, remember, she is older, and sometimes that happens to older people.
The
Right?
Older.
Amelia?
He might have known the people that went to her.
That is true, maybe.
She keeps trying to deny it. She's like, oh, you know,
older.
Well,
lady.
let's find out with our, what do we have next in my picture? Oh,
Oh.
so we're going to talk about skin blemishes in a moment. As you guys get to skin blemishes, or like pimples, marks on your face, scars. So this would be blemishes and non-blemishes. So they're going to talk about a skin blemish here in a moment. Just have some idea. In a perfectly normal way. He crossed the room slowly, sat down on the edge of the sofa. She placed his teacup on the table in front of him. There we are. How nice and cozy this is, isn't it? Billy started sipping his tea. She did the same, and for half a minute or so, neither of them spoke, but Billy knew that she was looking at him. Her body was half turned towards him, and he could feel her eyes resting on his face, watching him over the rim of her teacup. Now and again, he caught a whiff of a peculiar smell that seemed to emanate directly from her person. It was not in the least bit unpleasant, and it reminded him, well, he wasn't quite sure what it reminded him of, like pickled walnuts or new leather, maybe like the corridors of a hospital. At length, she said, Mr. Mulholland was a great one for his tea. Never in my life have I seen anyone drink as much tea as dear, sweet Mr. Mulholland. Oh, I suppose he left fairly recently, Billy said. He was still puzzling his head about the two names. He was positive now that he'd seen them in the newspapers, in the headlines even. Left? She said, arcing her brows. No, my dear boy, he never left. He's still here. Mr. Temple's also here. They're on the 3rd floor, both of them, together. Billy set down his cup slowly on the table, stared at his landlady. She smiled back at him, and then she put out one of her white hands and patted him comfortingly on the knee. How old are you, my dear? 17. 17? That's the perfect age. Mr. Mulholland was also 17, but I think he was a trifle shorter than you are. In fact, well, I'm sure he was, and his teeth weren't quite so white. You have the most beautiful teeth, Mr. Weaver. Did you know that? No, they're not as good as they look, Billy said. They've got simply masses of fillings in at the back. Now, Mr. Temple, of course, was a little older, she said, kind of ignoring his remark. He was actually 28, and yet I never would have guessed it if he hadn't told me. Never in my whole life. There wasn't a blemish on his entire body. What? Billy said. His skin was just like a baby's. There was a pause, and Billy picked up his teacup and took another sip of his tea. Then he set it down again, gently in its saucer. He waited for her to say something else, but she seemed to have lapsed into another of her silences. He sat there, staring straight ahead of him into the far corner of the room, biting his lower lip. That parrot! You know something? That had me completely fooled when I first thought of the window from the street. I could have sworn it was alive. Alas, no longer. It's most terribly clever the way it's been done. It doesn't look in the least bit dead. Who did it? I did. You did? Of course. So she's talking about taxidermy. So the fact that she stuffed this parrot.
What is that?
Of course. And have you met my little Basil as well? She nodded towards the dachshund cuddled up so comfortably in front of the fire. Billy looked at it, and suddenly he realized that this animal had all the time been just as silent and motionless as the parrot. He put out a hand and touched it gently on the top of its back. The back was hard and cold, and when he pushed the hair to one side with his fingers, he could see the skin underneath was grayish-black and dry and perfectly preserved. Good gracious me, how absolutely fascinating. He turned away from the dog and stared with deep admiration at the little woman beside him on the sofa. It must have been most awfully difficult to do a thing like that. Oh, no, not in the least. I stuff all of my little pets myself when they pass away. Would you like to have another cup of tea? No, thank you, Billy said. The tea tasted faintly of bitter almonds, and he didn't much care for it. You did sign the book, didn't you? Oh, yeah, that's good. Because later on, if I happen to forget what you were called, and I can always come down here and look it up. I still do that almost every day with Mr. Mulholland and Mr. Temple, Billy said. Gregory Temple. Excuse my asking, but haven't there been any other guests here except them in the last 2 or 3 years? Holding her teacup high in one hand, inclining her head slightly to the left, she looked up at him out of the corners of her eyes and gave him another gentle little smile. No, my dear. Only you. And that's where it stops.
What?
Now, here's where we get to use the clues to figure out what happened. And something most definitely happened.
Get somebody.
Knew it.
So if you want the actual end of the copy, it's going to be on there and you can find the copy there. So, foreshadowing clues. So here's the big one. He says that his tea tastes of bitter almonds at the end. There is only one thing that tastes like bitter almonds. And that would
Bitter
be
almonds.
Poison.
a specific poison called cyanide.
Oh,
If his tea tastes like cyanide,
Look it up.
what does that tell you?
There's cyanide in
He's
it.
trying to kill him.
Not trying.
He's going to
Dead.
kill him.
Once you've tasted it, you are already gone. Then, what about the dog and parrot?
They're taxidermy.
Are
Who
they?
taxidermied them?
The lady.
Ladies
They're made out of human.
Not only that, but she says she taxidermies all of her pets who pass away. What other pet is getting ready to pass away?
Billy guy.
What other pets passed away recently?
The
guys.
So when she's aware of the skin conditions of her guests, why would she know that there's no blemishes on his body or the fact that he had perfect teeth?
She had to like
Because she
go
looked
take
at
all
his
his clothes off.
Oh.
Yo.
Stop.
Uh-huh. Then that she smells like a hospital or leather or like pickles?
Yeah, because she like had
She
to
sprayed
like
herself with
clean them with
germ
like the hospital
killer.
stuff and then
There
she
you
had
go.
to, like, skin them.
Remember when you guys had to dissect a brain and it had like a certain smell to it?
Hospital.
So you don't want dead things to rot, so there's certain chemicals you use. Brains, people. Same idea. Yeah. When she keeps telling Billy she wants him to drink more tea,
She wants him to die faster and like die like quicker.
and then she tells us that like Mr. Mulholland really loved his tea. What does that tell us?
He
He
drank
drank a lot.
a lot of it.
Yeah. And then we get to why does he recognize those names?
Because they died.
They
Because
went
they were
missing.
They were
kidnapped.
in the newspaper.
There you go. Turns out they were in the newspaper for being missing people. That's why he was recognizing the names from there.
And that's why.
And why does she want to make sure he signed the book?
In case she forgets his
So
name,
she
she
can
can
remember
look
her
it up.
victims.
There you go. So she can go look up his name because can she ask him?
No,
No.
he'd be dead.
Now it turns out there's even more.
Oh.
When he arrives, were there any other hats or coats?
No.
What did you say that told me?
Nobody else lives.
Then what does she tell us later on?
They're still here.
So how would that make sense if she's like, we're the only ones here, and then 30 minutes later, no, they're on the 3rd floor.
She's older.
How can you be alone and have other people there? That's right, I did that one, you just covered that one. And why was the price of the room so cheap?
He's only staying there for like a day
He
when
wants
he
people
dies.
going.
So,
Then she can take all of his money.
there you
He pays
go.
in his life.
It doesn't matter. So basically, she's fishing. She's just like throwing out a little lure, and she's like, it's gonna be 5 and 6 pence. How's that sound? And she's like, I can make it less. And so that's why she keeps trying to bring him in. And then,
Ooh, and that's what she wanted him to eat.
remember when he first looked in the window, and I asked you when he saw the dog, and he says it's a good sign. What did you say that meant?
Happy place.
Livable.
What does it turn out?
Bad.
Happy place.
And so it turns out that that's why she has them there. So when you look through the window, you're like, look, little living creatures. This is a happy place.
Poor
And
Not
it turns
really.
out it's...
They're not little.
No.
I'm gonna get
Billy's
skin.
dead.
Billy.
She opens the door as soon as he rings the bell.
She doesn't. She
She's
doesn't
waiting
want
for
him to
her
be
next
waiting.
victim.
Yeah, that's my guess. This one I don't know as much. Maybe she's hunting and she's like a little spider. And she's like her little web and she was like, web, 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 web. And I don't know, but whatever it is, it definitely seems a little on the creepy side. You know how those old dirt people can be. And then again, I'm guessing I don't know if she has that like water bottle in the bed every night, or for all we know, it was a lie because she knew he wasn't gonna ever use it. So maybe it was just sitting in there and it was cold the entire time. And it was like ice, and she was like, "You can use it later." No, and the fact that he gonna be dead. And like the very beginning of it, with the weather, it says that it was so cold it felt like the blade of a knife against your face.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's these little clues all throughout it. So again, unlike the Lady and the Tiger, which doesn't give you an ending, this one gave you a definite ending. Be careful of older people. You never know what may happen.
So it's just old.
See you later.